The internet is the backbone of all app development. It is something that most of us use every day, but very few of us know exactly how it works. In fact, the internet is so ubiquitous nowadays that we rarely even think about it, unless, of course, we can't access it all of a sudden. So, before we start building some really amazing apps, it's really important that we understand how the internet actually works. Now, most people think about the internet as a bubble cloud that floats around somewhere in the sky and is full of lots of really complex and impossible to understand things, but actually, that's not correct at all. If we break down the internet into its most simplest terms, the internet is actually just a long piece of wire that is buried deep in the ground. The internet is really useful because two computers connected to the wire can communicate with each other. So, you might have one computer that's in Los Angeles in the United States and one that's in London in the United Kingdom, and these two computers can talk to each other through this wire. A computer that is connected directly to the internet is called a server. Every computer connected to the internet has its own unique Internet Protocol address or IP address. Just like postal addresses, IP addresses help computers find each other on the internet. Your home computer is not a server. This is because your home computer is not connected directly to the internet. These computers, the ones that you and I use every day, are called clients. So, how does your home computer connect to the internet? Well, let's say that you're sitting at home on your computer and you want to access a website such as the Dittofi website. You will type in www.dittofi.com into your web browser and press enter. Now, what happens behind the scenes is that your browser will send a message to your internet service provider or ISP. These are the people that you pay in order to access the internet. If you're in the USA, this will be a company like AT&T or Comcast. If you're in the UK, this will be a company like BT or Sky. The message that you're sending to your internet service provider is something like, hey, I want to see the website dittofi.com. The ISP will then route that message to something called a domain name system server or a DNS server. The domain name system server is like a massive book that contains all the domain names on the internet, and next to each domain name they have the IP address of all the different computers on the internet. The domain name system server will scroll to the domain name that you're trying to access and send back the IP address of the server that is associated with that domain name. So if you want to visit a website such as www.dittofi.com, your ISP will ask the DNS server for the IP address of the Dittofi server, and the DNS server will then look up the IP address of the Dittofi server that stores the Dittofi website. Once the DNS server finds the IP address, it will send the IP address back to your browser so that your browser knows the exact address of where you can find the Dittofi website on the internet. The next thing that happens is that your browser will send a direct request to access the information stored on the Dittofi server. This request will be made through the internet service provider, and your ISP will deliver this message via what is called the internet backbone. Now, the internet backbone might sound like a complicated bit of technical jargon, but in actual fact, the internet backbone is literally just the backbone of the internet. It is a network of undersea cables that connect all of the computers on the internet together. If you head over to the authoritative submarine cable map website at submarinecablemap.com, you can actually see a diagram of all the active or actively under construction subsea internet cables that power the internet. So, as you can see, the internet is actually made up of this crisscrossing mass of subsea cables connecting all of the internet users together. So, for example, if I'm sitting in Barcelona in northern Spain and I want to look at a website that is sitting on a server in Los Angeles in the United States, then my browser will need to make a request to see the website, and it will need to pass through over 6,000 kilometers of undersea cables to reach the United States. Once my request has reached the server that I'm trying to access, that server will need to send the website that I am requesting to see all the way back across the ocean through this massive network of subsea cables to my browser in Barcelona. And all I have to find my way through this massive network of undersea cables to the server that I'm trying to access is the IP address of the server. It's exactly like I'm sending a letter to my great aunt June who lives in the United States, but instead of writing her home address on the front of the envelope, I am writing the IP address, and rather than using the mail service, I am using my ISP to send the message to the server that I want to access. So, if I want to see the Dittofi website, my browser will first need to get the IP address of the Dittofi server from my ISP, and then my browser will need to make a request to access the website via the internet backbone. The request will pass down thousands of kilometers of undersea cables and arrive at the server located at the IP address. And the server that is located at the IP address is, of course, the Dittofi server. On the server, there are a bunch of files that I will need to access in order to view the Dittofi website. The Dittofi server will then send all of these files back to my browser via the internet backbone, and my browser will transform these files into the Dittofi homepage inside my browser. All of this back and forth and undersea travel past all the sharks and fishes and divers happens in a matter of milliseconds, and most of us will do this every day and multiple times a day. All you have to do is to type the website that you want to visit in your browser and press enter. For me, it's astonishing to think of all that information passing around above ground and underwater all day, every day in a matter of milliseconds. Why not try it yourself? Open up a browser and try typing in some IP addresses of famous websites, such as 172.217.203.147, and see which website gets returned.